But my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Could a 9/11 scale crisis be the political lifeline Trump's presidency desperately needs?" Mark Twain said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes," or words to that effect. And you recall back in 1991, Poppy Bush, Daddy Bush, George H.W. Bush, had his little war, his little 3-day war to kick Iraq out of Kuwait. Remember that? Well, in order to stage that war, he cut a deal with the Saudis where he could station American troops at the Prince Sultan Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia. Those troops stayed there after the Iraq War in 91. And so in 99, 8-9 years later, Osama bin Laden was out raving at anybody who would listen, including the New York Times, that American soldiers were defiling holy Saudi soil, the home of Mecca and Medina, were defiling holy Saudi soil by men watching pornography and drinking alcohol, and women driving cars and showing their elbows. And he said that he was going to strike America if we didn't pull our soldiers out of that, or our airmen, I believe it is, out of that Air Force base. We didn't. He did. He struck us. And, within a few months, what had George W. Bush done? He pulled all the soldiers, or the airmen, the American troops, out of the Bin Sultan Air Force Base. Now, the reason I raise this is because in September of 2001, in the 8th, 9th month of George W. Bush's presidency, he was in big trouble. I mean, he was despised by the American people. His popularity was in the crapper. It was widely believed across the United States that the election had been stolen from Al Gore. You had 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court who voted who voted to stop the recount down in Florida, which is what handed Bush the election. And the word was leaking out. Greg Palast had done this investigative report for the BBC. It was reported all around the world. None of the American news media picked it up, but it was still, getting through to Americans that several months before the election down in Florida, Jeb Bush, the governor, had purged about 90,000 African Americans, U.S. citizens, legitimate voters, had purged them from the voting rolls in that state. And that's how George Bush won by 537 votes. And if the recount continued, which the Florida Supreme Court had demanded, and by the way, 10th Amendment, the U.S. government is not supposed to mess with that. If that happened, then it was going to give the election to Al Gore. So Bush was in trouble, politically. And then came Osama bin Laden's attack on September 11th, 2001. And when the towers fell, overnight, George W. Bush became the most popular president, arguably since Franklin Roosevelt. He literally had a popularity rating that hit 90%. Now, this is something that Bush very much wanted. He wanted to have an excuse to attack Iraq. As he told Mickey Herskowitz, "One of the keys to being seen as a great leader is to be seen as a commander-in-chief. My father had all his political capital built up when he drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and he wasted it. If I have a chance to invade, if I have that much political capital, I'm not going to waste it." And he got that with 9/11. So, and then, now we learned that the whole thing was a scam. Now, I take you down this little stroll down memory lane because Donald Trump's poll numbers right now are worse than George Bush's were in the summer of 2001 leading up to 9/11 on literally every topic: immigration, ICE, taxes, inflation, healthcare, pollution, you name it. His poll numbers are underwater and then sinking. They're continuing to go down. Furthermore, there are allegations that the FBI is sitting on evidence that would demonstrate that Trump may have raped at least one and possibly 2 13-year-old girls, that his NEPO sons and son-in-law are cutting real estate deals and cryptocurrency schemes with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, while Trump is pushing to sell advanced chips to that country, which has a mutual defense agreement with China, which makes gets those chips to China. I mean, this corruption is so brazen that it hardly qualifies as corruption anymore. It's more like, what Saddam Hussein and Vladimir Putin did, turning the apparatus of the state into family enrichment. And on top of all of this, you've got, November looking like it's going to be a wipeout for Republicans. So Trump desperately needed to change the subject. And right on cue, he launches this unprovoked military attack against Iran, apparently at the urging of Benjamin Netanyahu, who has his own desperate need to remain in power, otherwise he goes to prison. So, the bombing of Iran has given Trump a few days of wall-to-wall coverage where we're not talking about the Epstein files. We're not talking about his raping 13-year-olds. We're not talking about his corrupt family deals for crypto and for real estate. We're not talking, it's just a classic wag the dog maneuver. But the next step is what really concerns me. Kash Patel has fired the FBI agents who were responsible for stopping Iran from doing something like 9/11 in the United States. He did this just 2 weeks before we attacked Iran. I mean, ask yourself why. Why would a president who bombed Iran simultaneously gut the intelligence and law enforcement infrastructure built by previous administrations to detect and prevent Iranian retaliation? Why would you poke a hornet's nest and then fire the guy with the EpiPen? Maybe because you want to get stung? I mean, this logic is almost too ugly to contemplate, but it tracks with recent history. I mean, look at what happened on 9/11. So if there was a spectacular Iranian, Iranian-sponsored attack on American soil, a 9/11 style attack, or even a Tim McVeigh style attack on American soil, Bush needed that. He got it. It saved his presidency. Trump needs something equally dramatic, and it could turn him into that wartime president with popular support. It would push the briberies, the rapes, the constitutional violations, the ICE killings, the election rigging, all off the front page. And it's not some wacky conspiracy theory. This is pattern recognition. So my argument is that we all need to be calling our 2 senators and our member of the House of Representatives and saying, stop this war now and replace the FBI agents, or bring back those FBI agents who were protecting us from Iran attacking us here in the United States. We don't want a 9/11 here, thank you very much. And it sure looks like Donald Trump is trying to set one up.